Do you know what I find that's interesting? I was talking to a CEO recently who told me that her company had just posted record profits. And when I asked her what had changed, she didn't mention a new marketing strategy or an innovative product. She said, I stopped trying to squeeze productivity out of my people and started investing in them instead. That conversation, that's exactly why we need to talk about people first leadership strategies today. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Toby Talks. As always, I'm your host, Toby Hoy. I'm glad that you're here with me today because we're going to dive into something that I think is fundamentally reshaping how we think about leadership. And honestly, it's about time. Today, we're talking about a people first leadership strategy. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Great. It's another soft skills seminar. But stick with me here because what we're really talking about is one of the most hardest, most difficult business strategies to execute, but it's the one that delivers the most measurable results. So here's what we're going to cover in the next half hour or so. We're going to talk about what people first leadership actually means and what it doesn't mean. We'll talk about the real business case that'll make even your CFO sit up and pay attention. And the biggest misconceptions that keep leaders from making this shift. And most importantly, a practical framework that you can start using tomorrow. So, whether you're leading a team of 5 or 5,000, whether you're in tech, in healthcare, manufacturing, or anywhere in between, this applies to you. So, let's get into it. First things first, what exactly is a people first leadership strategy? At its core, it's pretty simple. It's the deliberate choice to make employee well being, development, and engagement your primary strategic focus, not because it's nice to do, but because it's the most effective path to achieving your organizational goals. Think of it this way: most traditional leadership approaches treat people as resources to be deployed to achieve specific objectives. People first leadership flips that script. Your people are the objective. When they thrive, everything else follows. So let me break down the core principles because this isn't just some vague philosophy. Principle number one, psychological safety is absolutely foundational. Your people need to feel safe in speaking up, taking risks, and yes, even failing. Because without this, you're not going to get their best thinking. All you're getting is compliance. Principle number two, growth is non negotiable. I'm not talking about just skill training but actual career development, personal growth, and meaningful work. When people are growing, they're engaged. When they're stagnant, they're updating their resumes. Principle number three is transparency. Transparency builds trust. This means honest communication about challenges, decisions, and direction, not sugarcoating, not information hoarding, just honest adult conversations. And principle number four is autonomy over micromanagement. Give people the framework and then get out of their way. Trust them to figure out the how while you focus on the what or the why. And here's principle number five. Human needs don't disappear at the office door. Work-life balance, mental health, family responsibilities, these aren't just separate, these aren't separate from work. They directly impact people's performance. Now, notice what I didn't say. I didn't say that people first means avoiding hard conversations. I didn't say it means throwing standards, or lowering standards, or accepting mediocre performance. And I absolutely didn't say it means running your organization like a democracy where everyone gets a vote on strategy. We'll talk more about misconceptions in a bit. But first, let's talk about why this actually matters to your bottom line. So we'll get into the numbers because this is where people first leadership stops being a nice to have and becomes competitive advantage. I want you to imagine two different companies, same industry, similar size, comparable products. Company A follows the traditional playbook, top down decisions, quarterly earnings focused, and sees their people as replaceable parts. Whereas Company B has embraced a people first leadership strategy. Now, fast forward 3 years. What do we see? First is retention. Company B has turnover rates that are 30 to 50% lower than Company A. Now, let's do the math on that. The cost of replacing an employee is typically between 50 to 200% of their annual salary when you factor in recruiting and onboarding, lost productivity, and the pure cost of institutional knowledge walking out the door. I worked with a mid-sized tech company a couple of years back that calculated they were spending $2.3 million a year just on turnover after implementing some people first strategies, improving their onboarding, career development programs, and some transparent communication. They cut that by 40% in 18 months. That's nearly $1 million back into the budget every single year. The second is productivity. And I'm not talking about trying to squeeze more hours out of people. I'm talking about discretionary effort. When people give you their best thinking, their creativity, and their innovation. Gallup's research on this shows that highly engaged teams show a 21% greater profitability. And engagement isn't just some mysterious force. It's a direct result of how people are led. When people feel valued, when they see a future for themselves, and then when they trust that their leadership, they bring their A game. And the third is innovation. This is huge and often overlooked. Companies with people first leadership cultures see significantly higher innovation rates. Now, why? Because innovation requires risk taking, and risk taking requires psychological safety. Think about it. If your people are afraid to suggest ideas that might not work, if they're worried about being blamed or even punished for mistakes, they're not, they're just trying to keep their heads down and survive. You're not getting innovation, you're getting the bare minimum. I saw this firsthand at a manufacturing company that I consulted with. They had a suggestion box that hadn't been used in years. After the leadership team started actually implementing some people first leadership practices, really listening, creating safety, showing that ideas were valued even when they didn't work out. They went from 0 suggestions to generating 47 process improvements in the first 6 months. 47. And those improvements saved them over $300,000. The fourth is customer satisfaction. Now, here there's a direct correlation between employee engagement and the customer experience. Happy employees create happy customers. Now, that seems obvious, right? But how many organizations treat their customer service team poorly? And then they wonder why customer satisfaction is tanking. And finally, we'll talk about talent acquisition. In a competitive market, people first companies win the war for talent. The best people have options. And increasingly, they're choosing employers based on culture, growth opportunities, and how they'll be treated, not just on salary. So when someone tells you that people first leadership is soft, remind them that those millions in retained revenue, double digit productivity gains, and competitive advantages aren't soft. They're smart business. Okay, so let's address the elephant in the room, or really the elephants, plural, because there are several misconceptions about people first leadership that prevent otherwise good leaders from making this shift. Myth number one: people first means being soft or avoiding accountability. No, absolutely not. Listen, some of the hardest conversations I've ever had as a leader were in people first organizations. The difference is how you approach accountability. The traditional approach is your numbers are down, figure it out or you're out. The people first approach is your numbers are down. Let's try to understand why. What obstacles are in your way? What additional support do you need? What can we fix? And let's be clear about what needs to change and by when. Now, you see the difference between those two? You're still holding the standard. You're still having the rough conversation, but you're treating the person as a whole human being, not just a productivity widget. Myth number two: it means that everyone gets to do whatever they want, whenever they want. Now, come on. People first doesn't mean people run wild. It means autonomy within boundaries. It means giving people clear ownership over how they achieve clearly defined outcomes. I'll give you another example. I worked with a leader who micromanaged his team's schedules down to the 15-minute increment. We shifted to an outcome based approach. Here are the deliverables that we need, and here are the quality standards, and here are the deadlines. How you organize your time to achieve them is entirely up to you. Productivity in that case went up by 28%. Now, why? It's because he stopped treating adults like children and started trusting them to manage their own work. Myth number three: you can't be people first in a high pressure, competitive industry. Now, actually, this is exactly where you need people first leadership. High pressure environments burn people out faster. If you want sustainable, high performance, you need to invest in resilience, well being, and support systems. Some of the most successful people first leaders that I know work in healthcare, finance, and tech, where the pressure is relentless. They figured out that you can command excellence while still caring about your people. And in fact, you get better excellence that way. Myth number four is that it's expensive and time consuming to implement people first. Now, this one kind of makes me laugh a little bit because staying with the traditional approaches is incredibly expensive. Now, we just talked about those turnover costs. Now, yes, people first leadership does require some investment, things in like development programs and better communication systems and time spent in meaningful one on one meetings. But you know what else is expensive? Disengaged employees, customer churn over poor service, innovation stagnation, or lawsuits from a toxic workplace culture. And time consuming? Sure, I'll give you that one in the short term. But how much time are you currently spending on damage control or putting out fires and dealing with the consequences of poor engagement? And the final myth is people first leadership is just HR's job. This one really makes me laugh. That's an absolute no. Is this is a leadership strategy. not an HR program. Now, yes, HR can support it, absolutely. But the CEO and leadership team aren't, if they're not modeling this, if it's not embedded in how decisions are made and how success is measured, it's just lip service. People first has to be a strategic choice from the top that cascades through the entire organization. All right, so enough of what it's not. Let's talk about how you can actually do this. So here's where we'll get tactical. I'm going to give you the framework that I call the CARE model. It's not complex, but it is comprehensive. Now, CARE is an acronym, stands for connection, autonomy, recognition, and evolution. So let's break those four down. The C in CARE is for connection. This is about building genuine relationships with your people. And I don't mean mandatory fun or awkward team building exercises. I mean, actually knowing your people as human beings. So here's what this looks like practical. Regular one-on-ones that aren't just status updates. Ask questions like, how are you? And really be curious. What's challenging you right now? What's energizing you? And then, now this is critical, actually listen. Not the waiting for your turn to talk kind of listening, but real listening. Create forums for people to share ideas and concerns. Town halls, open office hours, or skip level meetings. Make yourself accessible and model vulnerability. Share your own challenges and admit when you don't have all the answers. This creates a psychological safety faster than anything else. The A in CARE is for autonomy. Give people ownership over their work. There's a simple test. Are you telling people what to do, what to achieve, or how to do every step? If it's the latter, you're micromanaging. Practically, this means to set clear outcomes and quality standards, and then step back. Let people figure out their own approach. Encourage experimentation. Create safe to fail projects where people can try new approaches without having career ending consequences. Push decision making down. If someone else can make a decision without you, then let them. Your job isn't to make every decision, it's to build a team that makes good decisions. The R in CARE is for recognition. People need to feel seen and valued, not just annual performance reviews, consistent, meaningful recognition. And here's how. Catch people doing things right, publicly acknowledging contributions, efforts, and growth, not just the end results. Personalize your recognition. Some people love public praise. Others prefer a quiet thank you. Know your team well enough to do that part right. And celebrate learning from failure. When someone takes a smart risk that doesn't pan out, recognize the initiative and what was learned, and tie recognition to values and behaviors, not just outcomes. Recognize how people achieve things, not just what they achieve. And the E, the final part of CARE, is for evolution. This is about growth and development. Your people need to see a future for themselves in your organization. Practically, you can create individualized development plans. What skills do they want to build? What experiences do they need? And where do they want to be in 3 years? Provide stretch assignments. Give people opportunities to work on projects that are slightly outside of their current capabilities. That is where growth happens. Next is to invest in learning, training programs, conferences, mentorship, and coaching, and not just for job specific skills. Invest in their broader professional development and have honest career conversations. Don't make promises that you can't keep. but show people potential pathways and help them build toward their goals. Now, here's the thing about this particular framework. You don't have to be perfect at all four steps and all four areas immediately. Pick one and start there. Build momentum from that. Maybe you start with connection, trying to commit to having better one-on-ones. Or maybe it's recognition, to implement a more robust system for acknowledging contributions. The key is to be intentional and consistent. People first leadership isn't a program that you launch, it's a practice that you commit to. So before we wrap up, I want to touch on something crucial: how people first leadership strategy connects to process improvement and organizational effectiveness. Because that's where a lot of process improvement initiatives miss. They focus on systems and workflows while ignoring the people who actually do the work. And then they wonder why the adoption rates are low and the results are disappointing. When you lead with a people first approach, process improvement becomes collaborative instead of being dictated. Your frontline people, the ones actually doing the work, become your best source for improvement ideas because they're engaged and empowered to speak up. I've seen this transformation repeatedly. Organizations that try to impose process changes from the top get resistance. Organizations that engage their people in co-creating those changes, they get buy-in and oftentimes get better solutions as a result. People first leadership creates the conditions for continuous improvement to thrive. When people feel psychologically safe, they'll tell you what's not working. When they feel valued, they'll invest energy into making things better. When they have autonomy, they'll experiment with improvements. So if you're working on operational excellence or lean transformations, digital adoption, whatever your improvement initiative is, make it people first in your implementation. Make it people first in the foundation. Everything else builds on that. All right, so let's bring this all home. People first strategy isn't a trend. It's not the flavor of the month. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about organizational success. One that recognizes that your people aren't just a means to an end. They are the competitive advantage. The business case is clear. The approach is tactical. The only question is, are you ready to lead differently? So here's my challenge for you this week. Pick the one thing from today's conversation, maybe that resonated with you. Maybe it's sharing more meaningful one-on-ones, or maybe it's giving your team more autonomy on a project. Maybe it's just asking better questions and getting and really listening to those answers. Start there. Start small, but start. Because, and here's the truth, your people are watching. They're deciding right now whether to give you their discretionary effort or just the required hours. They're deciding right now to share their best ideas with you or to keep their heads down. They're deciding right now to stay or start looking. And the leaders who get this, who commit to a people first strategy, they're building organizations that don't just survive, they thrive. Thanks for listening today. And if this resonated with you, share it with a colleague who needs to hear it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's the one people first strategy that you're committing to this week? Connect with me on LinkedIn or leave a comment down below. Until next time, lead well and lead with purpose.